So, do you prefer me calling you the delegate here?
No.
Okay.
I don't.
No.
I prefer you calling me Lorig. You're sitting in my house eating my pie.
Yes, all of that. Hello everyone who lives in State District 20, Maryland, which means you likely live in White Oak, Silver Spring, or Tacoma Park. This video is for you, because we knocked your door, and you privately shared with us on a microphone what you wanted our representatives to work on. So here is the response back from one of your state representatives, Delegate Lorig Charkoudian. This next person talked about, they were on Three Oaks Drive, and they were talking about new buildings that were built there, and how it used to be wooded area, but they took down the wooded area and built new housing there.
Yeah.
And they were talking about runoff and flooding in Sligo Creek over time, and how that they used to get a lot of floods in the area, but something changed, and then still, of course, Sligo has a lot of flooding, it's chronic. But then they were talking about breaking the wooded areas and how that makes it more flood prone, and how you balance the environmental concern.
No, I remember that, and she was talking about having a lot of basement flooding and investments folks had made to pull the water so that didn't happen, and that's a tricky thing. So I think there's a couple things in there. I don't know about that particular development.
Yeah.
Where the new development is. I think so. From a state perspective, one of the things that we do have under state sort of government control is we have the Forest Conservation Act, and we have stormwater management. And so our stormwater management, to some extent, and so all of that affects how development happens. Last year there was an attempt to strengthen the Forest Conservation Act, and it failed, and I'm hoping that will come back this year, and we'll strengthen that. And and I say that sort of as a big picture context. It may or may not have affected this particular development in more urban and suburban areas. You tend to have forest conservation play out more so with replacement trees having to be planted, and so a lot of the forest conservation work is maintaining bigger swaths of forest, which have greater benefit to conservation, to the climate and so on. But having said that, it's possible, without knowing the details of this, that forest conservation and stormwater management state level policy would affect this.
Yeah.
But then, then the county is responsible to the state for how development and so on is done in a way that meets the forest conservation, stormwater management, those kinds of things. So that would be really a zoning, planning and zoning question that would go to the county.
The county, I figured.
Yeah.
There was also, this I figured would also go to the county. This is the last one that I think is could very well be mostly county. Somebody just talked about, they were walking their dog, and they were like, when he wants to go, he wants to go. Yeah, and they were like...
Yeah, that is a county, that's a county thing, and I don't know... I don't. Well, here's the thing with those. I can always, forward a request on for folks. If people, there's certainly a lot of county issues that I have sort of taken on and worked with, but it ends up being a little less direct than if people are engaging directly with the county. Yeah.
Is there a? Could you take a 30-second detour and talk about how you do that when if there's a county issue or a U.S. issue, how you divert your time or resources to deal with those? Just because I think this is an educational component that people just don't understand.
Yeah, so there's an intersection, I won't get into the details of it, where there's been a question about it's a accessibility issue of like a safety issue for folks with certain disabilities crossing.
Okay.
And it's very much in the county. But the constituent that I had been trying to get some traction working with the county and hadn't. And so we sort of figured out how to move it up the chain a little bit, and we stay on top of and track. He's directly talking to a lot of other people in the county government, and I'm copied on all of that. And when it looks like it's not making progress. I can
so they have
kind
the brawn of Lorig. I see.
Encouragement. Yeah. So, and some of it is just knowing who to call, like who to reach out to.
That makes sense. Yeah.
And I think when you just stop somebody on the street and ask them what they care about, people aren't thinking about like, is this a federal issue? Is a cat like this is what I care about, and it shouldn't really be. And so in some ways, the 311 is supposed to be, it is county, but it is supposed to be like you don't have to worry about which agency is responsible for this. Like, let me call this, and then you get directed to the. Similar thing with like a parking situation where, again, it wasn't something that I had direct control over, but I stayed in the conversation until, and then there's a couple other areas. Okay. I'm trying not to give people's details.
That makes sense. It makes sense. Somebody talked about being a single mother, having 2 children, is an educator, and then looking for affordable housing and struggling to find that and still keep their job as an educator.
Yeah.
And I generally have some questions here, but I feel like are there legislative opportunities to bolster affordable housing right now? Is there political tension between folks doing affordable housing in the area? And then, is affordable housing also is there specific affordable housing for people who are older maybe, or for people with disabilities, with families?
Yeah. So there are some, and some of the funding, the main role that the state has a couple of roles that they can play. Again, affordable housing sounds like we don't do anything, but we do. I'm about to say the housing question tends to be more localized because, again, the zoning and that stuff. But I will say that so some of the things that the state can do as it relates is there are some funding opportunities. There's some state money that sort of supplements. So it's a lot of federal. Let me back up. Yeah. So affordable housing there's 2 different kinds of affordable housing. There's housing that's affordable because it has just sort of naturally affordable, like it's been older, it's been there for longer. Unfortunately, sometimes it's not as high quality. It may be affordable because it's kind of run down. Yeah. And then there's housing that is sort of planned affordable. And so the planned affordable is like when in Montgomery County, if you build a certain number of units, like 12.5% of them have to be affordable to moderately priced, and then some like low income. So it's just percentage wise, and it's a way of building housing that ensures more integration of affordable housing and with market rate housing. So when you're building affordable housing, there's federal money. Mm-hmm. And unfortunately, over the last maybe 20, 30 years, it's been significantly gutted. Yeah. But so there's federal money, and then there's some of that is supplemented by the state, and some of it's managed by the state. So there are state level policies that affect how it gets distributed. And certainly, I've been looking for opportunities that you could do more at the state level to leverage that. A lot of it ends up being localized, and I think the things that local county government can do is one is in the sort of affordable housing that's just the sort of naturally affordable housing, making sure that landlords are held accountable so that you have affordable housing that's affordable and it's there's accountability, so it's high quality housing, so it's not sort of falling apart, and that's why it's affordable. So holding landlords accountable, and I think so that's one piece of it. The other is again coming back to zoning or percentage of building or how much there is a question of like housing stock, and I don't know if you've seen recently there was a council on governments kind of had some proposals about how much we need to increase the housing stock, just sort of from a supply and demand. And so you need to increase housing stock and then make sure that the housing stock that's getting increased is planned in a way that you don't just build a whole bunch. So we do need more housing stock. You have to do it in a way that doesn't just build more luxury apartments, which you could around here just because the market is so it's such a high price market. So there's that, and then there's also questions just about density and really planning, and this ends up being both a transit issue, a climate issue, and an affordable housing issue. sort of increasing density and infill development. And there's some controversy about that because there's questions then about if you don't plan right around it, you have to sort of plan your schools and your transit around the infill development. But it's a way of keeping from having a situation where you just kind of keep moving people further and further out in the suburbs and having increased traffic. So there are some policies, I think, coming up in the upcoming legislative session, similar to what was passed, I think, in Oregon, that would require everywhere to be zoned, all single-family areas to be zoned for duplexes and triplexes. Is that what they're called?
What is a duplex and a triplex?
What's that?
What is a duplex and triplex?
So, like, if you've seen like a house that has two, like you can split a house.
Yes. Okay. Yeah.
Like,
I have those in my neighborhood now. Okay.
Yeah.
I think I have a quadplex though.
A quad. Okay. Yeah. That's is that actually the word for it?
No, I'm learning from you.
I guess probably.
It splits in four. Well, actually, they originally intended it to be 4. And I think that got busted somehow. Yeah. And somebody just bought it.
Yeah. So like a neighborhood that's zoned for single family houses. So the zoning itself generally is a county function. Yeah. But if you take single family houses and you have larger ones and you can split them in half and have 2 people living there, now you've just increased the housing stock. It's potentially less expensive than buying the whole house. You buy half the house. Right. And you, if you're doing it in areas that are close to transit, then you have more transit-oriented development. And so it's a way of, without doing a lot of new building of multifamily housing, which also needs to be built, but without doing that, it's a way of somewhat increasing affordability and somewhat increasing income diversity and increasing the transit access to, like if you were to take do that in a neighborhood that is closer to transit. So it's a very long answer to a question of an individual who, there's potential. I mean, I don't know her situation in particular. Yeah. We could look for.
She has 3 jobs.
Resource. Yeah. Yes. No. I mean, like where she lives and what her rent is and that kind of thing. It's ludicrous. I mean, but here's the other thing that I thought of So there's housing. You're probably gonna have to edit this because I got a million things to say. Whatever.
That's fine.
So there's housing, and let me just to finish this thought. So it's not common for the state to sort of override local zoning by saying everywhere has to have triplexes, whatever. But there is, as far as I know, there's someone there's someone who I think is putting in a bill to do that. Okay. So that'll be interesting, and I think my understanding of it is something that I would support, but I have to read it and see more about it.
And that's not like out into the public yet. This bill, or
it's not. So I'm not sure. The reason I'm not saying the person's name is I don't know if he's or she has announced it. It's definitely not like filed yet.
I see. Okay.
Yeah. So, but here's the thing. Here's the thing about affordable housing that I think is always really important to say. Because I do a lot of work like on food access too, and how you make sure people have access to healthy food. And there's a lot of things that we need to do in the short term. But in the long term, it's ludicrous that anybody is working 3 jobs to get their rent paid. Okay. And so, like, we need to do something about wages and healthcare and all of those kinds of things. And so. Without knowing the specifics of what wages she's getting, she's a teacher, I think, and so there's some. We just passed the $15 minimum wage last year. I'm putting into legislation this year that's about protecting workers when they think that they've been victims of wage theft. So protecting them against retaliation, so strengthening their ability to actually get paid the minimum wage. So there's things that need to be done around wages and making sure we're creating good jobs, making sure people have access to health care so they're not working that 3rd job so they can pay for their medicine, that the health care they're getting, they're not picking between rent and medicine. So I think it's always important whenever we're talking about one aspect of it, which is important, the housing, that we're also looking at, like, we have to build an economy where people don't have to work 3 jobs, to pay the rent. Like that is unacceptable. And I think we forget that sometimes we forget that big picture when we're focused on the specific. Like, in the meantime, she needs a place to live.
When she said that, I was thinking there's a lot. She was like, she focused on housing, but I was like, that's a lot that goes into having good jobs.
Yeah.
Okay, you wanted to end on your MGA note.
Oh yeah. So for folks who don't know, the General Assembly session starts. So a lot of people, to your point, like, don't necessarily know kind of what our work looks like, and so we have a 90-day session where we consider 3,000 bills, somewhere between 2,500 and 3,000
bills.
Yeah, it's pretty awesome. It's intense, but here's what I will say about it. Because of that, and we all have one staff person. They're part-time off session, full-time during session. It's a ton of work, and it is. And so what I like to stress for constituents is how important their involvement is. I think people think a lot about the federal government. That's what we kind of see more in the news, but people aren't always thinking about how much actually does get affected by state government policies.
Yeah.
And
states can guarantee rights.
Huh?
States can guarantee rights.
Yes, and people need to come and ask for what they want. So I'm thrilled to have this podcast. I also would encourage people to, if people were willing to get on my email list, I do send weekly updates of like what's happening in session, what's going on. Right. It's at the beginning of the session, it's weekly, and then maybe it's like more like a week and a half.
I was just comparing the other updates I get from other legislators. Like, weekly's impressive.
Just during session. Not like people don't necessarily want to hear from me weekly off session. But during session, just because things are moving so fast. Thank you. My Facebook is for that. But I also would encourage people to just come to Annapolis. We do, District 20... We do a District 20 night, and maybe you could like let folks that you're connecting to. So we do District 20 night, and last year we arranged transportation. So some people drive, but then we also arranged, like last year we did pickups in
carpools and stuff.
We actually paid for vans to pick people up. We had people up in White Oak. It's a pickup in White Oak, in Four Corners, and in Tacoma Park, I think is where we ended up doing it.
You guys had a grant for that, or you guys pulled your money?
No, we paid for it.
Wow.
Yeah. And we feed people too. But it's good, so come to Annapolis. And I think one of the things that I want people to see is just kind of how, you should know where laws are getting made that affect your life, and so you come and take a look, and then people will come, they'll have dinner, we'll talk. And then usually we do it on a Monday night, and Monday nights we have session at night, so people can then watch from the gallery and see like the session taking place.
Yeah.
And so that also, any other time, if people can get themselves to Annapolis during session, my office, come say hi. And I have snacks for everyone in my office. Coffee, yeah. I do, yeah.
That's good, yeah.
But if people are interested in working on an issue they care about, it's like, I think it's really important. I think it's I think that they're, as with any government body, paid lobbyists and corporate influence, it's just very easy. People have folks there full time doing their lobbying for them, and residents can also show up and tell their reps what they care about, but it's harder to do that. And so whenever I have a chance to encourage people to do that, I like to do that. So
and we can also, like I said, like you said actually, and asked, it's easy for us to give information at the door and just be like, you can take this right to them if you have something.
Yeah. So I'll give you some cards, actually.
Yeah,
when we leave.
yes,
You're welcome
please,
to hand people my card. And again, like as we talked about, some of the things are like county issues or whatever. I mean, we'll not necessarily have a solution to everything, but we won't leave people hanging.
That's cool.
Yeah.